Part 2. What I said last week was I can't say all will be well, but we will be okay. I'm sticking with that despite your despair or confusion or honest concern for our country. We will be okay. And I know many of you want me to roast the president-elect, and I'm not going to do that. And I know you want to think everyone in this room thinks like you. Boy, I think we learned something about that this week. And I know that if you won in this election, you feel that you might need to hide or you are being marginalized unfairly, and that isn't the way forward. We are a church that holds so many perspectives in our sanctuary. We are here together for the reason of making meaning of wherever we are in response to the events of this week. We are not a political party, and we are not one-sided, and we are not limited in our ability to hold the complexity of moments like this. We are a church together and forever. And I know the reality all the same. Some of you, many of you, are in sorrow and in fear. No matter what you think of his policies or his party, we elected a man who used violent rhetoric and uncivil behavior to gain traction, and that is the truth. He has a trail of abuse of women following him and a head full of denial. No matter your party, no matter your vote, there isn't much denying that he has been rude. And he has been insulting people of color and women and immigrants and people differently abled, and to put it lightly, he reacts badly to criticism. So our concerns are real. They are founded, and no one should rest easy in this time with these election results. We also need to remember that no matter what had happened in this election, on Tuesday we were waking up in a severely divided country on Wednesday. And some of us have heard those warnings of divisiveness, and some of us have spoken those warnings, and some of us just haven't been listening, myself included. Whatever the cause of our divisiveness, here we are. And so I am sticking with we will be okay because of a few things. Let me outline them. For one, you showed up here this morning. Like I said a few weeks ago, you had choices this morning. One choice was to hide if you didn't like the outcome of this election, and to retreat. My son and I were listening to a story of a woman in a podcast who, because of a light sensitivity, she ended up living in the complete darkness in a room for months on end. On Tuesday night, my 12-year-old spoke to me and said, "We can't be like that woman, retreating into the dark, out of the mouths of babes." All the same, I have been in a news blackout. I don't know which executive has been appointed to what cabinet positions. I have been listening to Aretha and Smokey Robinson while trying to do my part to make American music great again. I second that emotion. Respect. I can't keep doing that. Smokey's lyrics, "'Cause a love like ours is never free. You gotta pay some agony for the ecstasy," has been ringing in my car all week. For some of us, it is tempting to retreat and not to look. Maybe even the temptation is so real you feel like nothing can be accomplished, and retreat is the only way. There is some time for retreat. Gathering in a sanctuary like this can feel like that, but know that we are not of one mind even here in this room. And so my guess is we all have questions about the rhetoric we didn't agree on in the candidates, and so this is not a pure retreat from the world here. We gather because it's important to show up and to be together and to see each other in all our similarities and all our differences. 2, we will be okay because we have never given up when things seem difficult. I am talking about how this election now confronts our progressive values, the values that lift up the dignity of all, especially women and people of color and the most vulnerable among us. There's no way around it. Whether you voted for Trump or not, he has said things and behaved in ways that will question progressive values going forward. And the agenda to deconstruct support of progressive values will need our vigilance and our attention. I speak personally as a father of a trans youth. I am worried. I know my LGBT friends and family are worried. They feel like their rights are in jeopardy. I know my children are coming back from school saying the Mexican-American kids are preparing to be deported. And our Muslim friends in Richardson, I reached out to my friend, the imam, this week. He said, only we need to pray more sincerely. And his people are scared. But we never give up. This is what an engaged faith is. During slavery, many Unitarian and Universalists advocated ferociously for abolition. And when they were met with silence, they went to work on the Underground Railroad. And they hid fugitive slaves in their churches and their homes. When the Universalist women almost single-handedly brought about the right for women to vote, they were met in the halls of Congress with doors closed, and they didn't give up. They went door to door in neighborhoods to talk to women about their rights. When our ministers and lay people marched for civil rights with Dr. King, they were met with blockades and hoses, and then they went to shop owners and restaurant owners and confronted them. When the women of our church, this church right here, saw a contradiction in the women's right to make a medical choice about her reproductive system, they went to work advocating in a way that became the Roe v. Wade case. And while that course went all the way to the Supreme Court, the church, in the meantime, counseled women, helped them even get legal abortions offshore in the Gulf of Mexico. When the school systems in Dallas were fighting not to integrate in the late 60s and 70s, this church, which had integrated in 1945, the minister then and the lay people lobbied their councilmen. Even when met with deaf ears, they went and knocked on doors. The same is true about our people when it comes to environmental issues and fair housing and more. We do not give up. This is our DNA. When and if our values are challenged with policies that put people or our planet in danger, we will work to support those who need us. We will be okay because we don't back down from our commitments to build a beloved community here on earth. 3, and I only have 5, so relax. We will be okay if we can move from our partisan corners and not beat each other up till the bell rings, but rather uphold the value of dialogue and debate, even when we are not heard. That takes a lot of energy, I know, especially when others want to fight, but healing our democracy means we have to change our minds about each other. As Van Jones said Tuesday night on CNN, Democrats have to acknowledge some elitism in their party, and Republicans have to acknowledge some bigotry in their party, and only then can we move ahead. And that means we don't demonize those who believe differently than we do. But we seek to find out why they believe that way, and if we can understand. In this regard, we don't have any choice. We find a way or we fail in this great American experiment, my friends. That was shorter, now number 4. We will be okay because of the long arc of history is propped up by the American values that poets and leaders have spoken about. Whitman called it companionship thick as trees along the rivers of America. In the end, that is what we must strive for. The spirit that guides us. Lincoln pointed out that in the love of liberty which God has planted in our bosoms, that spirit is the spirit that saves our country and will save and nourish us. And number 5, if we hold our leaders accountable, we will be okay. The spiritual value of leadership becomes apparent to us at times like this. I have reflected on it 1,000 times. Spiritual traditions have a lot to say about leadership. The Jesuits put it like this: a leader must have self-awareness to understand their individual strengths and their weaknesses and their values and their worldview. A leader must have ingenuity to confidently innovate and adapt to an embracing of a changing world. A leader must have love to engage with others in a positive and loving attitude. And a leader must have heroism to be energized themselves and to energize others through heroic ambitions. The best list I found is probably the list from the Jewish faith, which said leadership begins with taking responsibility. No one who leads should shirk responsibility or fault. They say no one can lead alone, that we need each other, that there is no one leadership style that will save us all. So we have to look at the constellation of support to tell us more about how to move forward. The Jewish faith says leaders are about the future. The promised land is always ahead, and that leaders never stop learning. Leaning in to the learning is so important. Bertrand Russell said once, the whole problem with the world is that fools and fanatics are always so certain of themselves, and wise people so full of doubts. The issues we deal with are complex. They require nuance. Nothing is simple and clear-cut. The leaders that we need must be able to doubt themselves, to question their own assumptions, and lead with curiosity. Whether that will be true or not is yet to be seen. Leadership, though, doesn't just happen in the White House. It happens in all our houses. Each in our own way, we are, to a greater or lesser extent, called out to embody the best that leadership calls us to be for our families, for our friends, for our workplaces, and our neighborhoods. As I warned last week, the people called for a king and forgot to look high enough. But as I say today, they also forgot to look within. To be the embodiment of the leadership we want to see, in turn, asks us to help create a more perfect union by the leadership that we can exude. It is we who must keep open the doors of democracy. It is we who must shine when it is dark. It is we who must hold our values up front when we are confronted or challenged. I did a lot of reading while I was avoiding the news this week. and I read some work by Terry Tempest Williams, who knows something about being broken. You can go find out more about her. She said, when minds close, democracy begins to close. Fear creeps in, silence overtakes speech. Rhetoric masquerades as thought. Dogma is dressed up like an idea, and we are told what to do, not asked what to think. She said, an open democracy inspires wisdom and the dignity of choice. A closed society inspires terror and the tyranny of belief. And we become no longer citizens, but media-engineered clones wondering who we are and why we feel alone. Then lethargy trumps participation. She used that word, I didn't. And we fall prey to the cynicism of our own resignation. When minds close, democracy begins to close. When democracy disappears, we are asked to accept the way things are. As progressive religious people, we will not accept the way things are. We should not give up to our own cynicism. We will have to be vigilant in our values when they are confronting the core of who we are. Amen. And friends, I'm not calling on you for unity alone. I believe that to be a naive call at this moment. I believe deeply in resistance. And resistance we may have to invoke. But let us see. Let us try to see each other. Let us not back down from each other. Let us do as Margaret Wheatley said, remember, you don't fear people whose story you know. Real listening brings people closer together. Trust that meaningful conversations can change the world. Rely on human goodness, the spiritual value of our faith, and stay together. We will be okay. We will build hope. We will add our hopes together until they are a mountain of hopes for our world and for the work we will do together. Our defense against the loss of our democracy is in the preservation of the spirit which prizes liberty as the heritage of all. Destroy this spirit, and you have planted the seeds of despotism around your own doors. In short, Lincoln was saying in 1838, we never give up. Our spiritual work now is to integrate what we know in our minds and in our bones and find that deep place of knowledge, that hungry human spirit which has courage at its center, and to move forward. We have no alternative. No matter who won this election, our country would need those willing to put their backs into making it whole and healed. And if we aren't those people, I don't know who is. I love you. Love others. Amen.